Hi, my name is Darkbreaker, and it's been too long since I've done this, but today I'm reading The Great Cybersonic Mainland Race, a Thomas the Tank Engine fanfiction, and surprisingly, not a crossover with Sonic, even though it's a fanfiction and has Sonic in the title. Just to preface, I loved Thomas the Tank Engine as a kid, and I still have very fond memories of it. And I know people shit on it because it's Thomas the Tank Engine and like it has some weird messages or whatever. I don't fucking care. It's still a lovable show, whatever. Um, but obviously didn't keep up with it after I grew up. So some of this is probably going to be new stuff to me. Like I can see right here in the beginning, the Flying Scotsman, and I googled it, and apparently the Flying Scotsman is like actually a character in Thomas now. So okay. Anyway, let's read the description here. When Thomas, James, Gordon, Spencer, Connor, Caitlin, Philip, Rebecca, and the Flying Scotchman are invited to the mainland by some old friends. They get led into a race against a group of advanced high-speed engines who are great friends with Vinny. Can Thomas prove to these engines that he's still number one, or will he get outpowered by these engines? Chapter 1. Going to the mainland. It was a bright sunny mid-morning on the island of Sodor, and Vickerstown wasn't quite as busy as usual. But as the slight quietness was fading away, Gordon and Spencer were racing against each other towards their upcoming platforms. The two engines sped into the station, then they screeched to a stop once they came to their platforms. Ha ha! I won. I don't remember Spencer's voice. Come on, Gordon. You know I would have won if it wasn't for that small section of mud on the tracks. Mud on the... What the... How would that fucking slow down... Fucking... Have you seen Spencer? Pah. Whatever. And you should know that I'm the fastest engine on Sodor. And you should... Spencer was cut off when he thought he saw someone over by Thomas. Say, Gordon... Who's that over by Thomas? Gordon looked over to where Spencer was looking. Then he gasped at who he saw over by Thomas. It looked like a big dark green LNER A3 Pacific with two tenders and a pair of small smoke deflectors. Okay, just go all in with the description. Spencer didn't know him very well, but Gordon immediately recognized him. Why else would Spencer have been fucking who's that over by Thomas? Obviously Spencer doesn't know him very well. He clearly doesn't know him at all. The Flying Scotsman? As he was right, Thomas was talking with the one and only Flying Scotsman. A real life train. Thomas was telling him about all the adventures he had since they last saw each other during the Great Railway Show. And then I took a quick journey around the world. It's a fucking steam engine. Thomas is a steam engine. He can't... I guess I gotta do a Scottish accent. Is that so? During my journey, I made a new friend named Nia. But once the journey ended, she moved into Sodor with us. Just then, James and Rebecca pulled up to the surrounding platforms around Thomas. James pulled up alongside James, and Rebecca parked by the platform opposite from Thomas. Oh, come on, Thomas. You know I went with you when you went to the mainland. Yes, but I got there 2 days earlier than you. Pah. Okay, now, don't remember Rebecca being a character at all. And I'll find out during the editing. But here's her voice. Shh, I'm just going to make it up. I'm not looking up a clip. You know, James, you should be proud of Thomas going somewhere he's always wanted to go. Indeed, James. At least you got to go there with him. Ugh, I guess. Just then, Gordon pulled up beside James. Are you sure he didn't pull up beside Gordon? Hold the call. What is he doing here? Oh, hello, Gordon. What are you doing here? Oh, his controller had nothing to do, so he thought he'd pay us a visit.
You should be happy for this since he's your brother.
Uh, what? Wait, are you trying to tell me that Gordon's brother is the Flying Scotsman? Or are you saying that Gordon is Thomas's brother? Because I don't think that's true either. Oh, the indignity. Suddenly, Philip the diesel box cab sped up alongside them. He looked more cheerful than ever when he pulled in with the others. I also don't remember Philip. The last new character they added before I stopped watching was Spencer. So... or he's the last one I remember them adding, at least. So I'm just going to give Philip another random voice.
Oh, hello everyone. I've had the greatest day of my...
Philip was cut off when he saw the Flying Scotsman with the engines.
Oh, wow. Are you the one they call the Flying Scotsman?
Indeed, the one and only.
Wow, I've already heard so much about you. Already. Because that word makes sense in this sentence.
Suddenly, all the engines heard two different types of whistles coming all the way from the Vickerstown Bridge, and in just a couple minutes, two big streamlined engines came racing into the station. The one on the right was Connor. Connor was a teal New York City J3A Hudson, another real-life train that, at the time of its building in the 30s, may have been considered streamlined, but I don't know why you would call it streamlined in the tense of this story, because Thomas is set in, like, okay, granted, I don't know what time period Thomas is supposed to take place in, but it's a fucking steam engine, and it's not streamlined like Spencer is. So anyway, Connor is a teal Hudson with very light blue stripes going all the way along his side, and the same colored stripe going down the middle of his flat cowcatcher. He had a skinny yellow railing going along each side of his front half, and he had his name Plight on those sides as well. Finally, he had matching teal pistons with yellow stripes on each side. The one on the left was Caitlin. She was a slightly dark pink B&O P7A. Yet again, another real-life train. This time one that definitely is streamlined. With blue-gray stripes on her boiler, sides, and cowcatcher. She even has a small lamp direct center on her cowcatcher, and a matching blue-gray circular half rectangle. What the what is a half rectangle? You mean a square? What is a half rectangle? On each side of her tender. And also, dark pink with blue-gray stripes. Ew. What is a circular half rectangle? Oh. It's okay. It's it's just a square or a rectangle with a semicircle on one side. I'm sure there's a name for whatever the hell that is on a train. 100% certain. Anyway, the two big engines eventually pulled into the station by their own platforms. First! Oh, hey guys, what's the rush?
Oh, Thomas, we have exciting news.
You once said that you made friends with a bunch of international engines during the Great Railway Show, right? Yes, why?
Some of those engines are inviting us to the mainland for a special hangout. Ooh, how exciting.
Perhaps I should come along. I am needed back on the mainland anyway. Shall we go then? I better let Sir Topham Hatt know first so he doesn't get worried. So while Thomas went off to tell Sir Topham Hatt the news, the other engines were excited for their trip, but Gordon just rolled his eyes knowing that the Flying Scotsman was coming along as well. Chapter 2. The Highly Advanced Engines. Thomas and the others went across the Vickerstown Bridge onto the mainland. Wait a minute. I swear Vickerstown was like a real... Yeah, Vickerstown is in Thomas. Oh, okay. Oh. Well, I learned something today. Vickerstown, which I vaguely remember being in Thomas, does actually connect to the mainland, which is the UK. Okay. Cool. I learned something about a kids show that I liked fucking 12 years ago. Actually, I probably liked it a little bit longer than that. But anyway, back to the story. Thomas and the others went across the Vickerstown Bridge onto the mainland. They couldn't wait for their visit. They all chuffed under an arch-shaped structure, also known as an arch. And they had arrived at the same yard where they had the Great Railway Show. Why is that sentence so hard to say? Spencer, Connor, Caitlin, and the Flying Scotsman were all a little ahead of the others, and Connor and Caitlin were admiring the yards. Wow, quite an impressive yard.
Yeah, this is quite an amazing structure. The turntable is at the top of a slope.
Why? I feel like that's not exactly the most bizarre thing. Yeah, me and Spencer's home has been quite a modern place. Has been quite... What the fuck? Meanwhile, Thomas and Rebecca were the two engines in front of the others. Rebecca was also admiring the yards.
Wow, this place looks splendid.
Indeed, Rebecca. This is the yard where we had the Great Railway Show. Engines from all around the world came here to compete, and I made a lot of new friends that day.
Wow, that sounds like great fun. At least we can all have a friendly hangout. A friendly hangout this time.
I agree. A couple engines seemed pretty selfish around that time. Then they heard someone calling them over. When the engines looked over, whoever was calling them looked extremely familiar.
Is that who I think it is?
Over here, pals.
Saw the engines over at the spot where they had the most decorated engine competition, and there were some old friends. The first one was Axel. He was a red and black NMBS SNCB Type 12. That paint scheme would look fucking horrible on that engine. The big side panels of his boiler were deep red, and it had two large stripes with skinny yellow outlinings. All of his wheels were red, and his tender had the same big yellow outlined black stripe on each side of it. Hey, Axel, nice to see you again.
You too, Thomas, even though we hardly knew each other.
Then another engine slowly puffed up alongside Axel. This engine's name was Frida. Another fucking new character? Frida was a dark blue DB Class 10. To the Google, DB Class 10. Oh, so... Okay, Frida is actually a character, it seems. That's weird. Frida was a dark blue DB Class 10, and every single one of her wheels were rich red. She had a pair of black smoke screens on each side of her smoke box, and faint red stripes along her boiler. She had two skinny light yellow stripes going along her streamlined side plates all the way to the back of her tender, which had the number 406 painted in red on each side of it.
Well, hello, little tank engine. I thought we would never see each other again.
Hello, Frida. You're not still upset about when I mistook you for Gordon? Are you?
Nah, that was nothing. I'm truly sorry for the way I acted at that time.
Then as Thomas looked somewhere behind Axel and Frida, he smiled bigger when he saw someone else. It was Shane the Australian engine. He was a big teal SAR 520 class with yellow stripes on his front bumper. He even had 2 long yellow stripes going along his sides and across each side of his tender. Okay, Shane is also another actual character from the series. He had the number 520 on each side of his cab and the letters SAR on each side of his tender between the 2 yellow stripes in that area. After Thomas puffed past Axel and Frida, James puffed into the spot Thomas was just in. Axel?
James?
We cool for this hangout?
Totally.
Just then, Gordon pulled up about 2 to 3 yards in front of Frida.
Frida, is it? I heard Thomas mistook you for me.
Yes, but forgiven and forgotten. Meanwhile, Thomas was saying hello and talking with Shane.
G'day, Thomas. How are you and your friends doing?
Feeling great, Shane. And are you doing okay in Australia without me? Even though we're in fucking Britain right now?
Sure I am, Thomas.
Suddenly, when Thomas looked behind Shane, he gasped in complete shock, surprise, and delight. He saw a pink Nilgiri Mountain Railway X-Class tank engine, and she had so many colors on her paint job. Her cab sides and boiler were perfectly pink, but her smokebox and funnel were still black. She had so many multiple colors on her pistons, dome, and her front and back buffer beams were blue. Her pistons and dome had so many different details coated in orange, green, pink, and white. Luckily for Thomas, he knew exactly who this engine is. Ashima?
Thomas, over here.
Excuse me, Shane. Thomas quickly puffed towards Ashima, and Ashima ended up doing the same. Then they accidentally bumped buffers with each other, causing them to get dizzy. Okay. Once they regained themselves, they just laughed it off. It's so great to see you again, Ashima.
You too, Thomas.
Ashima looked behind Thomas for a second, and she got curious when she spotted Connor, Caitlin, and Rebecca.
Hey, Thomas, who are your 3 friends over there?
Oh, them? The 2 big streamlined engines are Connor. And the other ones are Caitlin, and the big yellow engine is Rebecca. Then Shane reversed alongside Ashima to talk with Thomas again.
So, you really feeling okay spending some time here?
I sure do. Why?
Because there's another group that's hanging out here, too.
Really?
Yes, but they don't seem very friendly.
Then James, Philip, and Rebecca pulled up near Thomas. No worries, Ashima. I mean, how unfriendly could this group possibly be? Then they all heard a few unfamiliar whistles from a slight distance. They looked over, and they saw something that nearly made their jaws drop. It looked like a big CNR U4A with 2 metal bars across his face. His entire front around his face was navy blue, and he had a light gray boiler. His side plates were deep blue with yellow outlining, and his cab and tender were that matching blue color. His tender also has that yellow outlining. His wheels were also that matching blue, but they had a white outlining, and he had 2 blue acute triangles with yellow outlining underneath his face, and it had a light smack in the middle of them. Vinny? Vinny pulled up in front of Thomas and James with a menacing grin on his face.
Well, Shrimp, we meet again.
Then Philip started pulling up alongside Thomas and James.
Hey, Thomas, James, how are you? Good. Oh, Shorty, you're here too?
Vinny started to chuff towards Philip, who started backing up a bit, but Thomas chuffed over the switches in front of Vinny, blocking his path. You won't be bothering Philip anymore.
Ugh, can't you take a joke?
We heard there was another group hanging out around here. So where are they? Then everyone looked towards their right, and they saw some unrecognizable engines. The engine that chuffed alongside Vinny was Lightning. He was bright red class Q14644 number 6130. He had a skinny yellow stripe going along each side of his boiler and had a big long golden lightning bolt painted on each of his side plates. His cab had a very dark red roof, and his wheels were matching red with glittering brass coupling rods and red pistons, each with a yellow stripe going across them. He had 2 skinny dark blue stripes going along each side of his tender, and he had a pair of pitch black eyebrows. There are too many voices for me to do in this story. Why are there so many characters? And what happened to all the fucking classic ones?
So, Vinny, is that the little blue shrimp you've been telling me about? You bet.
I am not a shrimp.
Oh, quit your whining.
Blue boy? Then another engine puffed up beside Lightning. This engine's name was Case. Case was a Class L1 Hudson, and he had slightly large and buff chin. His boiler and smokebox were deep yellow, and he had the letters CO on the side of his smokebox. His cab, wheels, pistons, and side plates were deep silver, and he had the number 490 on each side of his cab. His tender was silver also, but it had a thick yellow stripe going across it with a skinny red stripe right above it. Case, how about you call on the rest of our crew? Sir, yes, sir. Case blew a loud tone of his whistle that got the attention of all the engines, including the international ones. Implied with fucking all. The first engine that showed up was Lenoro. He was a bright white A0 series Shinkansen. Are we making up characters now, or are these other ones that are new? The base right above his wheels was a dark blue, and a matching blue stripe was going all the way across all of his windows. He and a glittering silver horn, and he had a slick grin on his face.
What's the hanging, mates? Is this the other group that was gonna be hanging with us?
Who said we'd be hanging out with engines that are friends with Vinny?
We did, of course.
The engine that spoke was Bruce. He was a very dark blue DBR Class 01. His front buffer beam was dark red with black firm buffers, and on top of them was a brass eagle ornament. He had 2 skinny purple stripes going across from his smoke box to the very back of his tender, and he had a pretty large nose.
Hey guys, we got a nice pack of geeks here with us.
The engines felt insulted, but they still looked over at the remaining engines. The first one, okay, back to first somehow, was Augustine. He was a Class 19D 482. His boiler, cab, and tender were all slightly dark green, but he had a bright red and very thin buffer beam with the same shaped buffers as Gordon. He had a black smoke box with a green-gray headlamp, and the top rim of his funnel was a matching dark green. He had a matching dark green cowcatcher, and all his wheels were bright neon green. And finally, he had the letters RFB painted in bright red on each side of his tender. The last engine of the whole group was Tatsu. He was a cross-country Voyager passenger diesel. Each side of his cab was slightly dark green, but the front base around his front window was yellow. He had big square-shaped buffers with bright red buffer base, and the rest of his sides were silver with red entry doors. He had a rather small face and had a tiny gray mustache. Oi! Who be these wee engines? Those are some of the engines from Sodor Vinny was telling us about. You mean that island this place is connected to? These engines do look usable for some railways. What is that supposed to mean? It means that no other engine is more modern than us. Thomas, James, Gordon, Philip, and Rebecca were shocked at this. They thought they were pretty modern for their standards.
We can be just as modern as we want to be, you big bullies.
Oh yeah? Then prove it.
I won a race against Gordon once, and he didn't even catch up with me.
Gordon just groaned while rolling his eyes once he heard that. Then Ashima moved ahead of Thomas a few inches.
They've shown some great skills during the Great Railway Show.
Yes, even I thought their skills were impressive. Axel then whispered something to Frida.
Frida, didn't you only watch what happened during the shunting competition?
Frida then realized what Axel was talking about. Then she found out that what she said wasn't very helpful.
I guess you may have a point.
Then, even though Lightning was a few yards away from Thomas, he still looked directly at him. Anyways, you really think you're as advanced as us? I would always be more advanced than a tiny blue pipsqueak. Why, you... Thomas tried charging full steam at Lightning, but Gordon and the Flying Scotsman quickly moved over the switches in front of Thomas to try and hold him back. Thomas, it's not worth it. After Thomas did a bit of slightly heavy breathing, he was able to calm down and back off.
Listen here, we can out-advance you punks any day.
Really? Then how about we all take part in a big race across the mainland? Thomas and his friends, including the international engines, all gasped in disbelief. Why would Lightning request such a thing? Why would you ask such a dumb question?
Augustine, show them the map.
As Augustine pulled up, a small round hole opened up on the top of his headlamp.
What have they got me on?
A thin brass arm contraption came out and hung over his head, and it looked like it was clutching a wide roll of paper. It only looked like it, though. It wasn't. The paper opened up, and it revealed what looked like the map markings for an advanced stretch of track.
The course is a tiny bit on the extreme side, but it won't be that bad. If you're not so much of a wimp.
Philip shivered a little bit from his words.
Come on, I always love a challenge. Even when there's a section going through a slightly unstable canyon.
Rebecca then realized that this sounded a little too extreme for her.
No sweat, we'll take you in this race. Alright then, meet us back here in 2 days, then we shall see who's best.
After Augustine put the map away, Lightning and his entire group rolled away feeling quite triumphant. Thomas and Ashima looked at each other nervously. Then every other engine did the same to each other. They were all thinking the same thing. This was going to be quite an extreme race for them. To be continued. Hopefully soon, or actually hopefully not, so I don't have to read more of it, because it was last updated in September of last year. Just yikes. Fucking, there are too many characters now. Like, there were already a lot. We didn't really need more. Alright, that's it from me. Stay safe. And subscribe for more garbage.